I've said the past few weeks that I am probably not going to be at Martin much longer. There's a lot of things I like about it. I love the people. I like the fact that the planners have kind of figured me out over the course of time. They've gotten to the point where they're sending me better loads. They, I think, understand me better personally and when I come in, so they know how to schedule me better. I like the fleet manager. He's just awesome. I am not so fond with one major thing, though, and it's the thing that, unfortunately, we all work for: money. I'll get into it a little bit later, but that's the long and the short of it, and it is stemmed straight up from Slipseat. Slipseat is the reason why I'm going to leave Martin, straight up. And I'll tell you a little bit more later. I've officially changed my schedule over from 1900 to 1800. So no longer starting at 7 p.m. I'm now starting at 6 p.m. That is a straight up thing. And the main reason is because I'm hoping to try to limit the amount of time I send in the Sam's Clubs. By starting an hour early, usually I shouldn't say usually. There's a higher probability that I'm going to be sent to a noise ordinance store. So I'm going to be sent to a store that is a shorter run first and then sent to a longer one second. That would allow me to finish earlier without having to go to a 4 a.m. store. There's a high probability of that. On Monday, I was scheduled Pickens, Easley, and then Anderson times 2. So there's 2 stops in Anderson. Then the second load was going to be Winder and then Bogart, Sam's Club. That is horrible because my second load being at Winder and then going to Bogart Sam's Club, that would almost surefire way of being that I was not going to be there first in line. And so I was going to have to probably wait for anybody who was in front of me. Being that it was a Monday, people that weren't able to deliver on the weekends are going to be trying to get in there. So that was kind of annoying to me. Anyway, the In-Transit app, the one that we use to track our progress throughout the day, it wasn't showing the second Anderson store. I had no idea why. So I asked the office and I said, what's the deal on that? They said, well, it's because the second Anderson location was in what's called an in-store transfer. Somebody had left a pallet at the first Anderson location, and it was supposed to go to the second Anderson. So I was supposed to be picking up from the first Anderson store and taking it to the second. And so there you go. That was what it was. But even though the load that I was picking up for first was at 100%, and it was sitting there at 100%, before it closed, I was changed to a first assignment of Lawrenceville, Buford, and Cumming because it was about to be late. Now, Lawrenceville was a neighborhood market, and it was a very interesting place because as I was approaching, you have to turn onto a non-truck route for about 100 feet and then turn left into the truck entrance of that neighborhood market. Or at least I didn't see a sign other than the one that says no trucks on this road. It didn't say like after 100 feet or something like that, which there's one in Snellville that does say that. No, not Snellville. Yeah, it is Snellville that says no trucks after 500 feet. But anyway, I pulled up in this neighborhood market, and there was another Martin truck already in the parking deck. There's 2 spots in the parking dock, and both of them were one of them was empty, and the other one was occupied by this other driver. Now, the interesting thing is, this is actually the first place I've run into that does not load up where you back directly up to the building. This one you back up to like an exterior type, dock, and then they pull it off and then they route it into the building. So it's kind of like an elevated, like 4 foot off the ground, concrete slab with a couple of, docks. Basically, you'd dock up to it. So that was kind of interesting. But the other Martin driver, they were basically unloading the last pallet, and when I got there, so wasn't a very long wait at all. And so the guy basically went from unloading him to unloading me, and it was fine. It was about 45 minutes total, and then from there I went to Buford, which was also slow. They only had one employee there in frozen dairy, and her pallet jack was extremely slow. So. While I was there, I was assigned a second stop. The second load for the day was going to be Estinole and Hartwell, and then the Athens neighborhood market at 4 a.m. I don't know why I always am sent that if I'm going to be sent anything in Athens at all, it's always that neighborhood market. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's the only store in Athens. I know it's not because I've seen a Supercenter out there. But it's like, I don't know why I'm always into that stupid Athens. It drives me nuts anyway. It's not my thing at all. It's a fine location until you realize that there's this one lady there that's really, really slow. And she's always the person that unloads me at 4 a.m. At least as far as I can recall. Anyway, so Buford wasn't a big deal. It took about 40 minutes or so for me to be out of there. Now, the thing that was annoying to me is that when you set your GPS to go out of there, it said turn right onto Georgia 20 and head towards Cumming. But then it routed me onto I-95 North, 985 North, which is not how you get to Cumming. Well, you can get to Cumming that way. Usually, it's going to be off of 400. You can get there off of 985. But I was looking at saying, are we sure that this is really the exit I need to take? And go on to I-95 North. But I looked at the GPS and I double checked it. And sure as the world, it was saying turn north onto the I-95. As soon as I pulled onto I-95 North, guess what happened? Off route, recalculating. And I'm like, what? So it recalculated and had me pulling off on exit 8, turning around and going back down south to exit 4 and then continuing. It's like, you basically routed me onto 985 for no reason. It was so annoying. Anyway, I pulled up 18 minutes before their shift change, which would be at 10 p.m. And so I ran to the door, hoping that they could get me unloaded before the shift change, because then there could be delays. They were actually pretty quick to open the door and had a runner already ready to go. So it was the first store of the night that was actually ready for me. So I got in and out of there really fast. Now, the issue that I've run into with this night, and it's been an ongoing issue, is load maps are not always right. Sometimes the loads themselves are really goofy. Now, I usually collect the stickers for each of the locations I go to. There's one location that there's a guy that insists on doing stickers himself. This week, actually, he didn't have a problem with me doing, but I'll get to that later. But the load map is sometimes deviated from. Also, they've sometimes, whoever's working in the DC sometimes also doesn't put all the stickers on the pallets, which is annoying. So anyway, that location, let me finish with it real quick here. That location, there was only 4 pallets I had left at 10 p.m. And they went ahead and said, okay, let's go ahead and finish them out. So that way I could get out of there, and they were done. And it was much appreciated. I was out of there by 10:12. Now, the thing about the screwy load maps and stuff like that is going to really come to a head in this time. Because I got in and out of the DC smoothly, and I got to Estanoli, my first stop at my second trip, which is Estanoli, Hartwell, and Athens Neighborhood Market. So I got to Estanoli by 1:30, and that was fine. He was fast and wasted not 1 second, whether it was pulling a pallet or shifting pallets around the trailer. And there were 4 pallets that after that he had to move in order to get to his meat in the second section. But he basically pulled all of them over to the right-hand side. We unloaded, then he pushed everything to the left-hand side and then restacked, and it was fine. I was out of there in 20 minutes despite having to shift around 4 pallets in zone 3. He was extremely streamlined, very good at his job, knew exactly how to move the thing. It was awesome. Anyway, I arrived to Hartwell at 2:35 a.m., and one guy was working there through lunch, only one. He knew the job well and did it well, although not exceptionally fast, mainly because he insisted on downstacking every single pallet that was a parent-child. He just pulled them, and then he knew the job. He just was doing things in the slowest way possible. Even though he wasn't actually slow. He was just downstacking pallets, and the pallet jack was slow. So anyway, it went about as well as expected. Now, I knew full and well I wasn't going to make it to the Athens Neighborhood Market before 4 from Hartwell. It's about 52 miles. And the GPS will route you on back roads. But I intentionally did not fuel up because I was hoping to try to get ahead as early as I could. I was really hoping to try to get as early as I could. And I knew that even though the best way for me to get from Hartwell down to Athens is like 50 some odd miles down through the back roads, I knew that I was not going to make it there before 4. So I went ahead and knew earlier in the day the best way for me would be to drive the back roads over to the interstate, take the interstate south and go to exit 160, fuel up, and then go down south to exit 149, pull off there and go to the Athens neighborhood market. So that's what I did. Now, once I got to the Athens neighborhood market, it was indeed the slow lady there. And I knew she was gonna be there, and so I didn't even bother rushing. Anyway, I arrived at that neighborhood market at 4:45 a.m. and was surprised to find that there was nobody in the docks. So when I pulled in there, I ran right up to the door. Slow lady was there. Now, at 4:45 a.m., you would expect that she would be organized enough to go ahead and have things ready, or at least to have anything inside there ready to go. So that way, as soon as I pulled up there, she could go ahead and unload me. But no, slow lady is true to her name. She was there and she was wasting time as always. So she didn't get to me until 5 a.m. I got there at 4:45 a.m. She didn't get to me until 5. Now, one pallet had collapsed backwards, so there were 3 associates that were restacking it. And I mentioned tonight's load map was really screwy. Normally what they'll do is they'll stack it so that way the first there's when it's a meat and produce, usually there's more produce than there is meat. So there's produce on the outsides and meats on the middle. Sometimes there's meat all the way on the end or on one side, and then there's produce in the other two. But in this case, it was produce, meat, produce. Okay. So the first store that you pull off on, usually they'll do produce and then meat. So you have to move the pallets that are in the produce section to get to the meat. And then you put the produce back in zone 1. And that way, when you get to the second one, you pull from zone, not zone 1, zone 3. You pull from zone 3, pull the produce off of there, pull the meat. And then if there's any left, you would go to zone 3 for or zone 1 for the remainder of the produce. And then when you get to the last store, it's just, dumping the rest of the truck out. But this night, the load map was completely screwy and the stickers were a bit goofed up. For example, the first store was easy. Unload pallets in the produce section, and then in the meat section, they had all their stickers, which means they had all their pallets. I got to the second store. They had pallets spread apart all 3 zones. So it was in the produce section, it was in the meat section, then the produce section again. So when I got to the last location, all I had to do was grab some in the meat and then some in the produce. Here's where it got screwy. That second store also had all of their stickers. I know because I count them. I know because I think I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, I will start numbering them at 1, 2, 3, 4. I will look at the store number. I will look at the pallet number. And then at the beginning of my day, the way I look at all of them is when I first look at my paperwork, I will put a circle next to all the stores that match the number of the first store. And then I will put a square next to all of the pallets that will match the second store. And then I put a triangle next to all the pallets that will match the number from the third store. And then I double check based on how many pallets it says I'm supposed to have, pallet positions. I will count those up to verify that I have pallet positions that match the pallets that I've circled, squared, or triangled. For if there's happens to be 4 stores, then what I will do is I've started putting a hexagon on it. If there's 5, I'll put a star. And then after a star, I'll just do a regular checkbox. I've never gone to more or been assigned even more than 6 stores. So that is my typical routine now. Now, as I mentioned, the load map has been screwy lately. And there's also been not all the stickers will be labeled on pallets. So it was really weird because there was so much deviation from the load map that night that I was having to double check out of other sections and find another pallet and then say, all right, now you're complete. By pulling the sticker off there, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm missing a sticker. And they would say, okay, which one is it? And I'd say, it's going to be one that's like 150. And then they go and look and then they find they find that it was actually a child that wasn't labeled, which is it'd be 2, if there's like 2 pallets or 3 pallets that are stacked on top of each other. The primary, the one is the parent. That's the one that I'll have the on my paperwork. And then I'll know there's 2 childs because it'll say like total pallet positions 8, total number of pallets 12. So I'll know that 4 of those pallets will have an extra, child piggybacking on them, or they'll be like triple stacked or something like that, in which case 1 pallet would have 2 additionals, something like that. Anyway, so I knew my first 2 stores were solid on their stickers. Okay. I got to my 3rd store. And when I was unloading, I realized that there was 1 pallet on there without a sticker that didn't have a sticker on it, that didn't seem to go to that particular location. So we unloaded the rest of their store, of that neighborhood market. And after we were all said and done, that pallet was still without a store information on there. We looked all over the place. There was no sticker on there at all. There was no indicators on any of the boxes as to any store it would go on. Well, when we pull back into the DC, one of the things we do is we open up the trailer to let them see that we have completely emptied the thing out. And I don't know what they would do if it was not empty. They'd probably have to fill out some form or whatever. But in this case, I was 1 pallet shy of going back to the DC. It was my last stop of the night. I was not happy about it. The other 2 stores had all of their pallets. That store had all of their pallets. There was 1 pallet left. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. So I was looking at and the lady that was there said, I'll take it. This low lady said, I'll take it. And so I looked at her and I said, you'll handle this, you'll handle the overage? Cool by me then. And she didn't say anything after that. So basically, the way I look at that, if the DC doesn't label all of their pallets, and every single location I went to that night had all of their pallets when I checked them off on the paperwork, that was an extra one. When she said she would take it, it was going to save me a hassle. And at this point, the DC screw up pallets all over the place. I don't know how many hours I have wasted by sorting things out, going to hunt through the trailer for an additional pallet that somebody stacked wrong or didn't put someplace or didn't label properly or something. So the way I looked at that one is that was an overage and I did not care. When she said she would take it, I was like, I said out loud, you'll handle the overage? Cool by me. So at that point, I was washing my hands of it and she took that pallet and I was like, fine, I don't care. I'm not going to sit there and call the office and have them tell me whatever they needed to. I don't care. I probably should, but as far as I was concerned, I said the words out loud, you'll handle the shortage. If you'll handle the shortage, that's fine by me. And she didn't say a word to that. She did hear me though, because she was right next to me. And after that, that was that as far as I was concerned. I got back to the DC and was done for the day at 6 a.m. That was it. That was done. Now, my Tuesday, I was assigned Swanee and Buford, and then a second load of Evans and Augusta. Now, when I came in, the Omnitrax was telling me that I was out of hours, even though I had been off the clock for 11 and a half hours. I checked my logs and everything because when I was logged off, it kept me on duty for some reason. Now, I'm wondering if it was because when I did my post trip the previous day on that Monday, as I was doing the post trip, I did it. I wanted to check the exhaust as I was doing my post trip. So I got out of the truck with it idling and checked the exhaust and then went ahead and checked everything under the hood to make sure there was no leaks or something like that. And finished my post trip. And then when I got back inside, I sent my macro 17 as the truck evaluation. And then I went ahead and logged out. I logged out as a driver. And once I logged out all the way, I turned off the engine. The reason I did that is because if you turn off the engine and it's in yard move, it instantly says your yard move has been terminated due to a power cycle. As soon as I logged out and it went back to the main Omnitrax screen, I turned the engine off and it threw that message. And I'm like, I had logged out. I'm like, whatever, I'm logged off. I'm wondering if the reason why it left me in on-duty status was because it changed from off-duty to basically, when it said that message right there, I'm wondering if that was it changing back to on-duty, just on-duty, not yard move. I'm wondering if that's what it was. So word to the wise, don't do that in the future. So anyway, I had to wait for it to update the logs, which takes like 15 minutes on the stupid Omnitrix. And then I went into the certify. I went into on-duty status, or the hours of service. And then I went into certify. And certify allows you to go in and edit things that are not the drive line. So I went into certify and I changed that 11-hour time block from on-duty to off-duty. Instantly, what do you know? I had 14 hours of drive time available. So at that point, I went ahead and logged in, and logged in as yard move, and then I went ahead and started my day. And that was fine. But I tell you, it took 30 minutes for the stupid Omnitrix to finish updating the logs before it let me edit the 11 hours. 11 hours, 10 minutes, and 38 seconds from on duty to off duty. Anyway, whatever. I arrived in Swanee just after 7 p.m. and there was a frozen dairy truck finishing up the unload. They already had a team there together, pulling together. So I was happy that it wasn't going to be that long, and it wasn't. I got out there in less than half an hour, including the time it took them to offload the rest of the other person. And I got to Buford right at 8 p.m. And they were dragging their feet looking for an electric pallet jack because they didn't want to go manual. I tell you, it's one of those things where they had, for whatever, they had originally when I got there were 3 managers. All 3 managers were talking about something, futzing around, talking about some employee that I guess they were driven crazy by. And then when they finally got over there to help me and unload me, they were like, "Where's that electric pallet jack? We're supposed to have it. Where is it?" And they went hunting for it. So it was half an hour before they finally got me going. And it was just annoying. I mean, it's like, why did they have to waste time talking about their business and then have to waste like 20 minutes or whatever it was looking for the electric pallet jack, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, they were unloading me, but they kept stopping to talk to each other. Like he would unload one pallet and then drop it for another guy to get it. And then he would just start talking to the managers again and the other managers. So they were all just they're talking, going through paperwork. And this one manager kept stealing my pen to write notes. And then he would start to walk away. But I was keeping a sharp eye on them because of the manager in Greenwood that always runs away with my pen. So as soon as I saw him starting to walk away, I'm like, "Hey, can I get my pen back from you?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, yes, sir." Anyway, it was some issue that they were talking about the GM side that was loading up and some employee that left it messy or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it took me about 45 minutes to get back to the DC. It took me about 45 minutes rather for them to finish up with me. And then I got back to the DC and it was a torrential downpour. It was so much rain. It was weird. Oddly, well, I'll get there. Anyway, got my second load and was to Evans by 12:20. The pallet, there was one pallet that was stacked on top of the frosting buckets, and it had shifted backwards against the roll-up door. So when I started to lift it up, first of all, there was a lot of pressure on the door, and I realized it was because something had shifted towards it. And I was lifting it a little bit at the time, and I looked underneath it and realized what was going on. I lifted it up to the point where it was above head height, and what he ended up doing is he ended up going in there with a pallet jack, a load jack, and just picking up the front and lifting it back a little bit. And from there, I was able to lift up the rest of it and clear it out. And that was going to allow them to get in there, but he had to basically downstack some of it. So he had to stabilize it basically. And that took a little while. So we had to stabilize it. Then and we were able to remove it just a little bit, enough just to be able to shift it around so that way it could be downstacked properly. And I mean, it took a few minutes. It wasn't a big deal. There were 2 other guys there that showed up to help. And then one stayed there and ran the pallets. The other guy ran off. And the unloader, the only thing that I would say that I wasn't overly fond with is that the unloader was running them way deeper than he should have. He should have just unloaded him, moved it a few feet, and then dropped it. But he unloaded it and then went way to the end. So the other guy, he was basically running it. He would pick it up and then he would run it and then come back and be waiting there for the other guy to drop it. And he was just waiting at that point. He wasn't going to come back this direction. He just came to the same place and then stopped, waiting for my guy to pull and then run it over there. So that was annoying. At least he could have come and met partway, but whatever. I got out of there at 1:20. Took about an hour, which was not fun. But anyway, I was just desperately trying to get to this worst location. It's the Deansbridge Road exit in Augusta. I tell you, I'm not a fan of this store. This store is so disorganized and they are just not on the ball at all. There's one employee there that I've seen that's on the ball. And I was really hoping that they were not going to be there during lunch. Anyway, I arrived, and after ringing the doorbell for a little while, I realized that I was not going to be able to get that door open. So at this point, I went ahead and ran around, and I got inside. And by the time I finally wrangled somebody to actually help me, it was 1:40. And just in case lunch was going to be at 2:00 and they were actually going to break for lunch, I was like, let's get this thing going. Let's get this thing going. So anyway, when I went to the back door, I literally rang it for like 1 minute before I ran to the front. And so, because I really didn't want to spend all this time and then have them say, well, it's 2:00, it's lunch break. We're going to be sitting out waiting an hour. Luckily, I got an employee who, he was plain clothes. He just kind of shrugged when I went there and says, hey, meat and produce. He was just like, anyway, he knew his job. He was pretty streamlined. He was fine. I mean, an employee that was there at the front in the checkout area buying something, he directed me back to this guy who basically went to unload it. He had no sense of urgency, but at the same time, he didn't waste time. He was using a manual pallet jack too. Wasn't using an electric. And anyway, he didn't have the key to let me out, so I had to run back around the building when I was done. But I tell you, while he was unloading, my energy level started to drop like crazy. And this is when I actually had to resort to caffeine on the drive back. And then stopped once for fuel just to move around a little bit. And I also, even though I don't normally eat carbs or anything like that during the week, I actually got a bag of combos using my points. So that was fine. Wednesday. Now, what I'm normally scheduling myself as is I schedule myself to officially start at 6. But I arrive somewhere between about 5 and 5:15. I go ahead and do my pre-trip. I get my paperwork. I get all the ducks in a row. And then I log in pre-trip yard move. And then I go pick up my trailer and I fuel up. That way I can get out the door in somewhere between about 15 and 20 minutes normally. And that's all under yard move pre-trip. You could say, why don't you do pre-trip as its own thing? Well, I could. The thing is, though, the way I look at it is I can spend whatever time I want to on my pre-trip, organizing things, doing whatever I need to, and that way I'm not using any of my regular time. And also, by me coming in early and doing this, if I log in early, what if they're not done with the load? That's the big thing, is I go ahead and pre-trip and stuff. There's been times I've come in there and the load is not done, and I would just be sitting there waiting while logged in, and my 14-hour clock is expiring, even though I'm just sitting there. So I go ahead and do my pre-trip and get it completely ready, go inside and get my paperwork, and then once I get my paperwork, that's when I log in and do it. That way there's not going to be any issue with, oh, your load's not ready yet. It's going to take like an hour and a half. Like, what was it, last week or the week before, whenever it was? I don't know. Anyway, so there was one planner that the female planner I've mentioned in the past. She knows I like doing a shorter load first and then the longer load second. This day, the male planner was in the back office, and he knows that he is oblivious to me. I have not really interacted with him more than just a couple of short times, but I had actually, but I told him on Monday when he changed me, when he changed me from that one load to the other load, I made a point to say, thank you so much. I appreciate you changing the load. I really like the shorter loads first. So my first stop on this particular day with him scheduling was a one-stop Duluth, and then it was Taylor's and Traveler's Rest. Ooh, that's nice. 3 total stops. So anyway, I was on my way to the DC around 5 p.m. and there was a torrential downpour, and I was called this time and asked if I had seen my load. And I was like, yeah, why? And, and they said, where are you? And I said, I'm 3 minutes out. Now, I don't start until 6 p.m. On this particular day, it was about 5 o'clock. It was just before 5 o'clock, and I was scheduled to arrive. I was going to be arriving by my GPS by about 5 p.m. And so when they said, how far away are you? I'm like 3 minutes out. And they're like, okay. I don't know what that was about. But anyway, so I went ahead and got everything going. I got to Duluth by about 6:45, and it took them about 10 minutes or so to let me in. Now, I know this store, and I know that they're fast and organized. I didn't sweat it. I didn't need to go ahead and run around the building or anything like that. I got out in an hour. And because it was a one-stop and it was just them unloading the entire trailer, like I said, I wasn't going to be that worried about it, not going to sweat it. So anyway, I got out of there and I went and did a drop and hook at the DC and was out by 9 p.m. I kid you not, that was so awesome. Because I got there early, got there closer to 5, got out of there before 6, got to the one place, and it took them an hour, and I got out of there and back to the DC by about 9 p.m. It was around 9 p.m. So when I made it to Taylor's, my first stop, it was around 11:40 p.m. And I only had 2 stops tonight, don't forget, and no hustling around pallets and that kind of stuff, because basically you unload the produce and then up to the meat when that's the end of it. And then most of the time, you don't have to go into the second produce to finish getting more. So it loaded up with produce, got their meat to them, and then the second store was going to be the rest of the meat and the end of the produce, which was awesome. So anyway, the guy started me at the Taylor's location, but after a couple of pallets, he stepped back. And in the past, there's this guy that's always said, I have to do the stickers. He's like, I have to do the stickers. I have to do it a certain way. Well, I spotted him. As soon as I spotted him, I'm like, oh, he's going to suddenly go slow because he's got to check every single sticker and whatever else. But this time, because I'd already started the process, as soon as I spotted him, I said, I've already been grabbing the stickers for you. And so all the ones that you see right there, I've grabbed. And he kind of looked at it and he didn't ask anything. He didn't say anything. I went ahead and continued to pull all the stickers and stuff like that. Anyway, by the time I was done there, the Traveler's Rest location is very streamlined. And there was another guy there. He was very good. So anyway, got to the Taylor's location. They were a little, they changed things out and stuff like that. And then I got to the Traveler's Rest location and he got me unloaded the rest of the way and stuff like that. Anyway, I was back to the DC and completely done for the night at 4:30 a.m., which was awesome. Loved it. Now, before Thursday, there was a few things that I ran into. Now, because things changed a little bit for me on Thursday. First of all, they changed one of the rules, and this started on Thursday, where I've already talked about how I don't like their fuel system. You pull up there in a trailer, and it's supposed to sense the thing underneath. As long as you line up with the fuel gauge on the reefer is exactly right at the pump. If you do that, supposedly it's supposed to unlock the pump and allow you to pump up there. If not, you can go inside, get one of the people from the trailer maintenance, and then they'll come out and use their little key fob on there. Even though when I started 6 months ago, it was one of those things where we were allowed to run in there and grab it and use the key fob. It was actually sitting out there on one of the things, and we just grabbed it and did this. They're getting more nitpicky with this, and I don't know why. Now, if you run inside and get them, they come out with a clipboard, and they want to know your trailer number. They want to know your name so you can enter it. They want to enter some information, I guess, because they're trying to do, they're trying to double check everybody is, or they're trying to look for trends, like like if drivers are too far out routinely or too far in or not lined up correctly, they're going to probably try to educate us again. Anyway, that's really annoying. So they're having to mark down our names and the trailer that we're pulling in there. Anyway, this same day, I was actually driving out when I first left the DC. And as I was driving, there was a vehicle that, first of all, the Omnitrax made a weird noise that I hadn't heard before. So I glanced down at it. And then when I looked back up, it happened to be at this exact same moment that it was like a van like a plumbing van type thing. He pulls out of this gas station, even though I was right there. And he pulls out and for whatever reason doesn't accelerate. So he like pulls out and just sits and just coasts slowly. So in that, he started to pull out the second I looked down at the Omnitrax. So as soon as I looked back forward, I saw him and I was approaching him fast. So I went to put on the brake, and at the exact same moment that I went to put on the brake, the truck slams on the brakes. And it puts up collision stop on the screen. And I'm looking at this, and as soon as I put on the brakes, he starts to accelerate. So, I got ahead of him because I literally put my foot, and the like a tenth of a second after that, the thing, as soon as I and I started feeling myself slow down, I felt the truck slowing down, and it put the graphic up on the screen. So anyway, that was really annoying because when I released the brake, the truck was still braking. So it's like, and the truck continued to brake until I was completely stopped. And then once it was stopped for about 2 seconds, it allowed me to accelerate again. This was annoying because I was going about 25, 30 miles an hour when it started putting on the brakes. And there was a car behind me who sat on his horn as soon as I put on the brakes and went to release him, and the truck wouldn't release and continued to brake. He sat on his horn because he wasn't happy about me putting on the brakes. And then he wasn't happy about coming to a complete stop. I wasn't either, let the truth be known. It was so annoying. Anyway, gonna definitely be looking for another job. Another thing is, going into it, I had not slept for very, very good the past 3 nights because I was just having issues getting to sleep because I was constantly worried about my loads. And then once I wake up after like 3 hours, I'm not going to get back to sleep. So guess what happens? I toss and turn, and then I'm unable to get back to sleep. I don't want to take a melatonin or something like that after I've been asleep for 3 hours, even though, I probably could. Well, this particular night, going from my Wednesday until my Thursday, which happened to coincide with real world times because my Monday was Monday night, and I was going to be finishing my week on Friday night, ending Saturday morning. So this was literally Thursday early afternoon. I wake up, I take that back. Thursday late morning, because I'm about to go to sleep. I decided I was going to take a valerian root, which calms your mind, and then take 2 melatonin, which I have never done before. They're only 3 milligrams, so it's not that big of a deal. But if I ever take a melatonin, it's usually 1. But this time I took 2, and I took a valerian root. It knocked me out hard. And when I got up, I was stiff, but very well rested. I'm very happy about that. Anyway, one thing that is highly annoying about the truck that I've been in this week, all week, is that the air tanks seem to drain really quickly. I don't know why. But it really is one of those things where, they don't want you idling the truck, but as soon as I get in the truck, I would turn it on. I'd crank it up because I would want it to idle because it's going to lose its air pressure. And then say trans air low. And I'm like, great. Let's just sit in here and wait for the thing to idle and wake up. So anyway, I would idle the truck constantly. I would constantly, shift it. If I was sitting there in neutral for a moment, I was going to end up, getting, leaving or something like that, I'd shift it into drive or reverse and then back. And then once it connect, I would go back to neutral. That way it's not going to cycle down because the cycling down annoys me when it shuts off so quickly. Anyway, Thursday, I was assigned Suwannee and then Snellville and then Hartwell and Anderson. Now I got to the DC around 5:10 p.m. and was out with my trailer before 6. I arrived in Suwannee at 7 p.m. and the GPS takes me 85 via 316. So basically, I leave the DC and go on 78. I take Highway 11 to Highway 316 and take that down to Interstate 85 when it turns me north. The problem that I run into is that Suwannee exit going north in rush hour traffic, and this is the tail end of rush hour, the traffic light always delays you. It only lets through like 6 cars. And so you'll end up going really slow and you'll end up missing a few traffic lights. So what I decided to do, knowing that area very well, is as I was going down 316, I took the 120 exit, which is Highway 120, which is Duluth Highway. And so I made that right turn, and then you go down like a 1/10 of a mile and turn right onto 317, which is Lawrenceville-Suwannee Road, which takes you directly there. So anyway, that's what I did that particular day. And, I'm paid a flat rate fee, so I'm not being paid by the mile anyway, because it's only Snellville and Suwannee, so it's going to be under 90 miles or whatever. And because of that, I'm not worried about it. The company says, follow our GPS. Well, as soon as I make the turn anyway, I just am going to reroute over there, so it will route me onto that way anyway. I know it's a state highway, so it's going to be fine. So anyway, I pulled onto 317, went down Lawrenceville-Suwannee, turned right onto Satellite Boulevard and pulled into the Walmart. All was well. So anyway, I got out of the Suwannee location in about half an hour, and I was to Snellville in another half an hour, which was fine. Had to run around the building and find someone, even though there were people in the loading dock. I could hear them in there, and they're talking. For whatever reason, they don't come to the door and they say, "Hey, we've sent for a manager," or someone should be coming with a key or anything like that. They just, ignore me. They'll just ignore whoever it is there and just, stay on their job task. Whatever. Anyway, the dock, when I finally got inside, I ran around and the dock was barricaded with products. So they had to clear all of these pallets out before they would let me go. It took about 45 minutes, but I was on my way. Now, dispatch called when I was about 15 minutes away to tell me my next load was not even assigned a trailer yet. And they asked if I would want to do a Greenville, then Greer trip. It was ready to go, and I was like, oh yeah, because it's like 50 extra miles. So of course I'm going to want to do that. And I'm not going to have to sit there and wait, because if it hadn't even received a trailer assignment, then once they assigned it the trailer, then they would have to load it. So it could take easily an hour, hour and a half, or even more. So being that this one was ready to go, I was like, yeah. They told me that there was another driver, that this load was his, but he was already there and he didn't have to log in yet. So he wouldn't mind waiting until my load was ready. I'm like, fine by me, please. So they changed me over. Anyway, so I was to Greenville just after midnight and nobody was in the store. I tell you, I got there, rang the doorbell, heard nothing. Ran around the front, no one. I was walking all over the place, looking through all the little nooks and crannies, didn't find anyone. And then when I got back, I was walking around, I walked back up to the front of the store and I look out there and all the employees are outside smoking and just out there conversing. It's like, you weren't there a moment ago. I don't know where in the world you were, but for whatever reason, I don't know. They were goofing off back up there in the front. So anyway, I was in the back ringing the doorbell for 10 minutes. So by the time I got to the front and ran straight in the door and was looking around, there was nobody in the store. I was looking around saying, where is everybody? Well, it ends up being that they were on break, but it was outside. But since it was after midnight, they were on their break. Went outside, and as soon as I made myself known and stuff like that, they're like, oh, okay, we got you, and came back inside. Anyway, finally, God was able to help me get unloaded. He didn't waste any time once he got going, and I was out of there by 12:45, so that was fine. Now, this particular trailer was barely cooling. Normally, they don't want the temperatures for produce. They we deliver produce at 40 degrees and meat at 30 degrees. It was, as soon as the temperature would drop to 49.9, the reefer section, the zones that were set for the produce were happy, and they would shut off. The meat section would shut down at 39.9. That's the thermometer. And it was not set to start, stop, or cycle sentry. It was set to continuous. I don't know why. I don't know why it was cycling anyway, but I remember looking at that, and it was just not wanting. It was like a tenth of a degree below 10 degrees over the temperature is supposed to be set at, and it was just for whatever reason cooling. So at the end of the day, I did end up red tagging this trailer. I'll see what they do with it. Anyway, I arrived at the neighborhood market Greenville location, and they had people moving pallets around the parking lot, which is because they're doing work out there in that lot. So because there were people that were going back and forth between the store and the parking lot, the door was open. So as soon as I got there, they were shifting things around, doing their renovations, whatever. I ran inside. They got me unloaded in less than 20 minutes. No time was wasted. I was so happy. Anyway, I got to my Greer location. It was also a neighborhood market at 1:30. Now, they didn't have anyone near the doors. So after a few minutes, I ran around. Took them about 15 minutes to get me going. And I really wanted to finish them by 2 a.m. lunch. And tonight, they happen to have runners. So we finished right at 2 a.m. And that was nice because it's a neighborhood market. They go to lunch at 2. So anyway, got in my truck, and I had a voicemail from the office warning me of a thunderstorm. Now, there have been torrential downpours almost every single night this week and for the past 2 weeks. But I looked up and didn't see a cloud in the sky, even though it was dark out. I'm like, there's nothing up there. I looked at my app, both Windy and AccuWeather. Neither one of them showed anything in all of South Carolina. I have no idea what that was about. So I was like, that's really weird. So I went ahead and drove back, and not one drop of water hit my windshield the entire drive back. And it was fine. I hadn't received any phone calls when there was a torrential downpour that I was driving in. No call at all came through warning me that there was a bad thunderstorm. But as soon as I had a clear day, that's when it warns me. It's really weird. Now, that was the end of my Thursday. Before I started my Friday, I'm getting ready to go to bed, and I receive a message from my partner, and she's telling me, your paycheck is horrible. I bring up the settlements and I look at it, and sure as the world, last week, I had 2 days where I only had one job, not two. Okay. And because of that, I ended up not qualifying. I did not have 1,350 miles, which would be the miles you need in order to get the guaranteed pay. Nor did I have 7 loads for the week. I had 2 days with 2, and then I had 2 days with 1. So that was 6 within the pay cycle, which means I did not qualify for guaranteed pay. And because it happened to be a slip seat week, remember, slip seat is you work 5 days, you're off 3, you work 5 days, you're off 2. So this happened to be the pay cycle where I was off 3 days. That leaves 4 additional days. That leaves 4 days of pay. And because some of the the 2 second locations were flat rate jobs, $50 with $15 per stop, and the other ones were right around 200, 225, 250, whatever. It ended up being that I did not qualify for the miles or the amount of jobs to get guaranteed pay. So my paycheck was god-awful low. It was less than $200 a day, even though I'm working 11 to 12 hour days minimum for 5 days in a row. So I worked about 55 hours is what I estimated. maybe 53 hours because that one day I got off early. 53 hours is my estimate. 53 to 55, we'll call it. And I took home $917. Now, granted, that was me working 4 days. But still, that was the number of jobs and the number of miles per pay cycle. Even though I had worked the full 5 days, it doesn't count that. It doesn't count. So the whole 53 hours thing was split in the week. So I don't even know what it would have been for however many hours. But what I do know is that it does not count the entire section because it splits, the pay week starts midweek. That was the moment when I said, I am definitely going to find a different company because this sleep thing is annoying. I go back and forth between a good week and a not good week. And then when I cycle myself out of the weekends, which is what I currently am. Remember, I told you I started Monday night and I finished the Saturday morning. That means I'm not working any weekends except like a few hours. But if I started Sunday night and I finished Friday morning, it would be the same boat. I would be for Sunday night for a few hours. I would be working on a weekend. But I tell you, I cannot wait until I cycle back into the weekends, which is going to be after this upcoming week. Because this week, I just got through having 2 days off. I'm going to be going back to work. I'm going to sleep in half an hour, and I'll be waking up and starting my work on Monday night. Today's Monday night, or today's Monday, so I'll be starting Monday night. Anyway, this is annoying. This is really annoying because I like Martin as a company. I like the people. I like that they finally figured out my schedule, but I'm not making any money right now. I have been driving now for over a year. So at this point, I'm going to be eligible to get higher paying jobs. But what are those going to be? Probably not going to find a local job. I'm going to try, but it's probably not going to be a local job. Going to maybe have to go on the road again or go Southeast Regional or something like that. Don't know what it's going to be. Not happy about it, though. I really wish that I made more money with Martin. Anyway, my Friday, there's not much left to do. Might as well get through it. I was a little bit better by the time and didn't sleep well because I was thinking about the lack of money. So little money when you work 10 to 12 hours a day and you take less than $200 home. That's kind of annoying. That's like fast food wages, what fast food people are paid. But, Class A driver's license is a skill that you have to go to school for and you have to have experience for. Anyway. Friday, I was assigned Jasper and LJ and then Cumming ×2. So 2 different Cumming stores. Couldn't sleep past 3 p.m. So finally, I just, before I had gone to bed, I was applying to other jobs through both Indeed and Trucker Report. So I could not sleep past 3 p.m. So at this point, I get up and I start filling out more applications and I go ahead and start calling truck companies, knowing full and well they're not going to be open. That they're not going to be open very much longer. Because it was late afternoon, I figured I'd be able to reach pretty much everybody. And I reached some. But anyway, so nothing really to report there just yet. By the time I got to Jasper, they were very well organized and fast as always. I was out of there in 20 minutes when they basically had a team of runners and a very fast puller. LJ was one guy doing both. I arrived just before 9 and got out of there 25 minutes later, and he didn't waste any time. So really awesome there. Now I was back to the DC and cycled through, and I got to the first Cumming store by 1:40 because I had done my longer run first. And I got to the Cumming store at 1:45 rather. I really wanted to catch them before lunch too. So if they go at 2, that's if they go at 2. I don't know if they do or not. So I ran around the building after 5 minutes and I got inside. They were organized and the guy unloaded me to the dock. He didn't run everything deep. So they went very fast. And he was like, pretty fast, right? I'm like, yeah, very fast. Thank you. And I was out of there in a total of 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes. It was about 30 minutes, actually. So it was funny because after the pace that I had for my first 2 stores, I had not yet had a moment where I was in something other than the drive line for 30 minutes or more. So when I stopped there, I only had when I was finished unloading, I only had 45 minutes left on my clock drive time because I had not broken for 30 minutes or more to get back the last 3 hours of my schedule. So when I came back out there, it was just passing over into 30 minutes. So I looked at it and my drive hours went to 3 hours and 45 minutes, which was awesome. So anyway, that gave me back my last 3 hours. I got to the second Cummings store at 2:35, rang the doorbell for 5 minutes, and they opened up. And the guy was by himself with a slow dolly, but it was my last stop. And he had 2/3 of the trailer there. So, he didn't make me wait though. I was good. I wasn't that concerned because he was working through, at 2:35. And if he wasn't, and if he kept me there during, their lunchtime or whatever, I might be a little more annoyed. But by the time I got in there and he started unloading me, it was fine. Anyway, it took me 15 minutes to be unloaded, but he was happy. He was working well by himself. And again, it was my last stop. It was my Friday, so I wasn't all that freaked out about it. So that was my week. And I'll tell you, I am very interested to see what happens this upcoming week. I'm going to be interested to see if, since I'm now officially putting all my times coming in at 6 p.m., am I going to get any 4 a.m. stores? This week, I didn't, except the neighborhood market. I would love to get a week where I had no 4 a.m. stores. And if you recall, I was originally going to, another store, and then Bogart, the Sam's Club. I haven't been to a Sam's Club in a couple weeks now, and I really hope that stays the same. I would love to be able to keep that a thing going. Also, I can't wait until I work back into the weekends, because when you work on the weekends, you get paid a premium of 30 cents additional per mile when you work on a weekend. So if I am with Martin long enough, you can go back and look at my previous paychecks, and you can look straight up and you see when I do not have 1 or 2 weekend days. If I have 2 weekend days, the paychecks are going to be good because it pays you 30 extra cents per mile. If you do not work on a weekend at all, or it's like you start Sunday night or you start Monday night and in Saturday morning, one of those where you only have half a day, those days you don't make a whole lot, especially with slip seat. You'll end up only working 4 days within that pay cycle. And none of those pay cycles are going to be on a weekend. Or if they are, anyway, that's that. Okay, I guess that's it for this week. I'm going to apply to more jobs and we'll see if I can get hired by somebody. Thanks for watching.